Here in New York City, Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Smith. It is the Stephen A. Smith Show, brought to you by Credit Karma. Get your truly free credit scores and free credit monitoring from Credit Karma today. Credit Karma, get knowing. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. We'll get to the phones. We've got a ton to talk about today. Opening day. Finally, we've got baseball. And it's starting even earlier than it normally does. But I'll tell you, if you live someplace like we live here in the Northeast, or you're somewhere in the Midwest and you have had just an absolutely brutal winter, and you live with ice and snow and sleet and freezing rain, when baseball comes back, it's like all of a sudden a palm tree popped up in your backyard. So knowing that we're going to have baseball, legitimate regular season, real baseball to talk about starting tomorrow. It is finally opening day, and Carl Ravitch is going to be right here in New York calling the Yankees-Orioles opener. He will join us at the top of the next hour. So we're going to do a baseball a little bit later on. We're going to start off with football, maybe sprinkle in a little NBA with some Harden Giannis stuff from last night. But there was a lot to talk about at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Again, Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. on a Wednesday afternoon. All right, I am the Cincinnati Bengals. The vote yesterday was 31-1 in favor of taking offensive and defensive pass interference and letting it go to review in the last 2 minutes from the booth. Coaches' challenges before that. 31 teams voted in favor of instant replay to be used on pass interference based on one horrible, awful, historically bad, maybe the worst non-call in the history of the sport that took place in the NFC Championship game in New Orleans last year. And I get it. I get that you want to make sure that you have the at your disposal at all times in case of emergency break glass solution so you never have that happen again. But to me, and I was hoping all through the offseason, the more you heard that this may be the way that they would go in the NFL, that cooler heads would prevail and that they would say, you know what, we saw with the best officials we've got in our sport on the biggest stage in our sport, a championship game in one of our conferences, we saw two guys just freeze and not have the stones to make a call and throw a flag. And it was unbelievable that that happened, but that it really was a one in a million moment. In your life as a football fan, do you ever remember a non-call as bad or worse than that one, with as much riding on it as you did there? I don't, which is part of the reason why I thought cooler heads might prevail. And I thought they may say, let's not change this rule. Let's not open the Pandora's box of starting to take judgment calls and go to replay. And let's look at this kind of in a vacuum, that this call in the next 50 years of us watching football will probably not happen again on that stage. Having said that, though, I apparently am the Cincinnati Bengals because they are the only team that voted against going to replay for pass interference, offensive and defensive. And the reason that I am against it, and the reason that, and look, I work for a team. I work for the New York Jets. I'm their radio announcer. They voted for it. So their own employees coming out and saying, I disagree with them, I would have voted against it, is because not that I don't want to correct that call. Who wouldn't want to correct that call? Of course you want to correct that call. Of course you want to be able to find a way to make sure that a call that would have ended a championship game and altered which team played in the Super Bowl basically rode on that moment. Naturally, I would want to get that right. But to me, this goes towards the Pandora's box that now gets opened that I'm not sure they are fully thinking through. And the reason that I am against it is because as much as I want to get that call right, I just simply don't trust the people in charge of instant replay in the NFL to not take this and now go where replay has gone with all other types of calls in football, I think in baseball, at times in basketball. The problem, I think, with instant replay in all sports is that it has gone to a place it was never intended to go in the first place. Instant replay was supposed to correct the Don Denkinger blown call at first base in the World Series. That pass interference call in the NFC Championship game, right? Mike Renfro in the back of the end zone against the Steelers in a playoff game for the Oilers. The season-altering, potential championship-altering, 99 times out of 100, there's no way a human being with sight would get the call wrong, blown call. The call that's so obvious, so egregious, so brutally awful that you're going to take replay, you're going to correct that, make sure we get it right and move on. And yet what has happened with the technology and with the people in charge of that technology, it's become Frankenstein. To the point that they had to change what is a catch and not a catch based on the fact that replay was taking plays that had been catches for 100 years in football and telling us all they weren't catches. So they had to redefine the catch rule because of the unintended consequences of replay going way too far in the other direction. Because now we have gotten to the point with instant replay where we freeze frame plays, frame by frame by frame. Working for the Jets a couple of years ago, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and any Jet fan, any football fan maybe, would remember this play against the Patriots, remember the highlight. Austin Seferian-Jenkins catches a ball, a little hook out in the left flat, turns upfield, gets hit, dives for the pylon, in through the corner of the end zone, lands out of bounds, but breaks the plane and goes through the end zone. Clearly a touchdown. For 100 years, it is a non-debatable touchdown. All the officials throw their hands up. But wait a minute. It's a scoring play, so it automatically has to go to replay. Well, what do they see in replay? He gets hit in midair, and for a nanosecond, for a freeze frame or two of a slowed down, super slow-mo, back it up, move it forward, back it up, move it forward, look at replay, you can see the ball just kind of jostle free in his arms. But then played at full speed. You can't with the naked eye even see that. And then he lands out of bounds with complete control of the ball. It's obviously a touchdown. What happens? Fumble. He fumbles it through the side of the end zone, Patriot ball out to the 20-yard line, complete game changer. And a call that in a million years was never, ever, ever intended to be used replay-wise to be changed. So I use that just as one of many, many examples. All right, now let's look at pass interference. How often are you going to have a pass interference call? That's nothing like what we saw in the NFC Championship game. Not only think about coaches' challenges for the first 56 minutes of the game, the first 28 minutes of each half, but how about the last 2 minutes of each half? Think about what we could now have with instant replay, with the booth initiating calls on not only flags thrown for pass interference, but non-calls. So it's a tie game, a three-point game, 25, 30, 35 seconds to go. Someone throws the ball over the middle. Wide receiver goes up, bang, bang, play. Literally as the ball arrives, defensive back comes in, knocks the ball away. What do you think the team that is looking for the call, and maybe if it was outside of the last 2 minutes, just for the heck of it, might throw a challenge flag if they had them left, their sideline, and especially if they're the home team, the entire stadium is going to be screaming for every play like that to be reviewed. For the booth to buzz down, let's take another look at it. Think about the number of plays that we could have in the last 2 minutes of a first half, and oh my God, with the game on the line, the last 2 minutes of the game, where all of a sudden, before you run the next play, the replay booth is going to have to buzz down to see if maybe someone grazed a wide receiver just a shade too early. And now it may be, in this era of looking for things to overturn, rather than only using replay to overturn the most egregious things, looking for things to overturn, that you may get constant stoppages in the last 2 minutes of each half because of potential game-changing plays. There's no penalty in all of football that more greatly alters the outcome or can than pass interference. It's the only penalty in football that can be over 15 yards, right? What other penalty in football can be a 30, 40, 50-yard penalty? Hail Marys might have to go to the replay booth. just to see if maybe a defensive back on a jump ball grazed the guy a little early, altered his ability to get to the ball. Now all of a sudden you get the ball at the 1 yard line. Because if you slow it down on super slow-mo instant replay and you see even a hint of a non-flag thrown pass interference, and now you've got the ability to change that call, you really don't have an excuse not to. I think it's terrible. And I would have been right there with the Bengals voting against it. When you start to go to replay on calls that are judgment calls, you start to bring much more of a human out. This is no longer, did he break the plane or not? Did he step out of bounds or not? Did he catch it or not? The black and white line calls that have to do with, you're supposed to be able to see, like, without a doubt evidence that you got the call right or wrong. This is now a judgment call. How many times are you watching a game where you see a play that you would call pass interference that the guy on the field didn't? Or how many times would you see a play that you wouldn't have called pass interference, but the guy on the field threw the flag? Then you go to replay. It's pretty 50-50. You don't think that human element comes into play in the replay center in New York? I cover college football for ESPN. About 3 or 4 years ago, myself and a handful of broadcasters went to the instant replay convention for all college replay guys in Chicago. And they booked this hotel for a couple days, big ballroom, couple hundred guys that are the replay booth officials at all college football games. And what they do is they give everybody a clicker, like a yes or a no little handheld remote. And up on a screen, they'll put up different plays. And they will say, this was the call that was made in the game. Should the call stand, or would you reverse it on replay? And you either hit yes or no for yes, let the call stand, or no, they got it wrong. Replay should review it. And I'm telling you, if they put up 40 examples, maybe a handful of them were pretty much unanimous. There were a lot of calls that they put up on the screen that the guys that are actually in the replay booths at college football games would vote, and it would be like 60-40 or 70-30, meaning depending on the guy that you had in the replay booth, he was going to make the call that could potentially change the outcome of the game. And if it had been a different guy in a different replay booth, the outcome of the game would have been different because two different people would have voted in opposite directions. So there is a human element to this where now you go to pass interference as a reviewable call, and you are opening a Pandora's box that I wish they never would have opened. And I'm not sure now where it stops. Why do you draw the line at pass interference? Just because it's a game-changing call? Why not include roughing the quarterback? Maybe the guy touched him, maybe he didn't. Maybe your version of roughing the quarterback and how hard a quarterback got hit and how much a guy drove him into the ground, maybe your definition differs from mine. This is the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. So if you want to give me a call and tell me why I'm wrong, feel free at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. But I can see this becoming end-of-game drama, end-of-game controversy, law of unintended consequences, where they never, ever thought that replay with a lot of other calls would go. To me, with pass interference, it could go times 10. You're going to slow these replays down frame by frame by frame, and you may get a guy who's playing really well in the secondary. He's going to see a ball thrown over the middle. He's going to go up and try and time it, and he's going to hit a wide receiver, a nanosecond early. And I guess by the book definition, that's pass interference. You hit him a little early, it's pass interference. Might be to you, may not be to me, or maybe it is to me and not to you. Judgment call. Going to replay? Very, very dangerous precedent. Very dangerous precedent. And again, they were 31-1 in favor of it. I would have been a voice of dissension. If I was a team owner or a team general manager, it would have been 30-2 because I would have been standing right there next to the Bengals saying, I don't like it. The one other thing, a couple of other football topics that drew my attention. I was at Indiana last night calling an NIT game, so kind of in and out of the practices all day. Didn't hear a lot of talk shows, but over the last couple of days, the news comes out that Rob Gronkowski retires. And I was amazed, just scanning Twitter, at the back and forth at times on Twitter of people saying that Rob Gronkowski might not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, ultimately, Rob Gronkowski is a no doubt about it Hall of Famer. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But when you talk about a first ballot guy, you are talking about, putting a guy on a different level. To me, that now has become the line in the sand where you're like a special Hall of Famer or not if you get in on the first, maybe the second ballot. It means you're a no-brainer Hall of Famer. You're a guy that automatically goes in. Because the Hall of Fame or Halls of Fame in different sports has been watered down a bit. And let's be honest, we have put guys into Halls of Fame in different sports that were good players but not great. Were great players but not immortal. In what universe is Gronk not a first ballot Hall of Famer? Rob Gronkowski, I think, is the most dominant player to ever play his position. If you are the most dominant player to ever play your position, you are by definition a first ballot Hall of Famer. No one changed how defenses had to guard that position the way that guy did, especially in the red zone. But even look at his yards per catch. He was unstoppable. If you are by definition unstoppable, you are by definition a first ballot Hall of Famer. To only play 9 years, be number 1, number 3, yards per game, receiving touchdowns for your position. And I'm telling you right now, living with the Jets and living in that division for the last decade, there have been players that the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets have gone out and drafted purely based on the presence of that guy. Gronk altered how teams drafted. Gronk altered how teams deployed their entire group of troops defensively. You played different defenses against the Patriots when he was on the field than you played against any other opponent during the season. Look, there are other great tight ends. There are the Gateses and Gonzaleses of the world, and those guys are great, great players. And they're also automatic Hall of Famers. But none of them were as dominant as this guy was. I was stunned at the number of people that even thought it was a debate as to whether or not Rob Gronkowski was a first ballot Hall of Famer. You're a dominant player at that level? You're not a first ballot Hall of Famer? You better believe you are. And that is the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. All right, we'll get to some phone calls here. We'll squeeze in as many as we can during the first hour because Carl Ravitch's going to have the call of Yankees-Orioles tomorrow on opening day. We're going to talk baseball with him at the top of the next hour. So let's get right to it and talk to Pete, who joins us first here on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. What's up, Pete?
Hey, Bob. How you doing? Thanks for taking my call. I respect your opinion. As a Saints fan, as egregious as the Cincinnati Bengals have been with Pac-Man and Vontae Burfict, of course they're going to vote no. They've marauded people. And then I'm here in L.A., on the Rams side, you got 3 goons in the back with Talib, Peters, and I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name, we're playing the game of football. Technique, spirited, sportsmanship, period, hands down. As a Saints fan, yeah, we made a mistake. Maybe we should have ran it instead of passing it. Great. But you got 4 to 5 people from Southern Cal calling the game, biased.
Well, now you want to get to conspiracy theories? I actually kind of lost whatever you were talking about there. I think you were agreeing with me. I'm not 100% sure. And if you're that deep into the phone call and I still don't know what you're talking about, we move on to the next guy. We go to Brian, who joins us next here on ESPN Radio. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
For the most part, I totally agree with you. It's a dumb rule change. It's going to slow the game down for one, and it's gonna affect too much.
Here's my problem with it. The goal of replay is to eliminate controversy, not create more of it. To me, when you're reviewing judgment calls, you are potentially going to create more controversy, not lessen. I think we will have more debates on Mondays about whether or not a replay review of a pass interference call got it right than we have as to whether or not the officials have gotten the call right in the first place right now. I think this is going to create more controversy, not create less. And to me, that's a problem. When you open the Pandora's box of reviewing judgment calls, your eyes may see and interpret something different than my eyes will. And in the last 2 minutes, when challenges are out the window, and now all replays have to come from the booth, and the booth is going to have to initiate whether or not only on a flag thrown, but on a non-call. That means every single time in the last 2 minutes of a close game, when a defensive back is anywhere near a wide receiver, somebody's going to want to review. Either a flag's going to be thrown, and the team that had the flag thrown against them is going to want the booth to take another look at it. A flag won't be thrown, and the team that feels like they were victimized and they should have gotten a pass interference call, they're going to want the booth to review it. You're going to have on almost every passing play in the last 2 minutes of a close game, one sideline or the other sideline exploding, not happy, and wanting the booth to take another look at a play. Think about watching football right now. How often do you see a wide receiver at the end of a play where he doesn't make the catch, throw his arms up in the air looking for a flag from somewhere? I mean, it happens like on almost every passing play in the NFL. It's like a wide receiver's version of being a golfer, shanking one and then looking at his club. Oh, it turned in my hand, right? Even when you don't make a good play on the ball, even when it's your fault, you dropped it. You're automatically turning around, throwing your hands up, and looking for a flag. Now, in the last 2 minutes of close games especially, all of those plays could go to the replay booth. You're the replay booth. Or you are New York and you want to initiate a replay of a call that was or was not just made. You see a guy on the monitor from way up in the sky or at the broadcast center throw his arms up. You're going to sit there and go, oh, we got to look at it. We have no choice. It's a 3-point game, minute and a half to go. It's going to be a 30-yard penalty if it either does or does not get called. I don't like it. And all based on a call that was so egregious, so awful, so mind-numbingly inept that those two guys who were both looking at it in the NFC Championship game, neither threw the flag, that I don't think on that stage, in that spot, we will ever see a blown call that bad again. But now we're going to take the ends of all of these games and potentially throw them into pass interference replay chaos based on something I really don't think in our lifetimes we're ever going to see again. That's how bad that missed call was. 888-SAY-ESPN. 888-729-3776. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. And coming up when we get back as well, I'm going to bring up the team that I think is the most interesting team in the draft and the team that I think may alter the draft for everybody else in the top, say, dozen or so picks. And we will definitely get back to your telephone calls. If you're on hold, stay right there because, you know, I see a lot of people lined up and want to talk about instant replay now, having governance over pass interference, yay or nay. If you haven't tried the delicious high-quality meat from Butcher Box, you're going to be blown away. Butcher Box brings you the meat, and it's meant to be the way you want it. You get all the benefits you're supposed to get. Unbelievable flavor, unparalleled nutrition. They work closely with the best farms and companies committed to raising animals humanely, from grass-fed beef to free-range organic chicken to wild-caught sockeye salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Butcher Box has over 20 different cuts of meat to choose from with customizable boxes and a variety of other options to choose from. And Butcher Box comes at an affordable price. With free shipping, you can get a month's worth of the best-tasting meat from Butcher Box for less than $6 a meal. Butcher Box is offering Stephen A's listeners free ground beef for the life of your subscription and $20 off your first box when you sign up at butcherbox.com/Stephen A. Don't miss out on this special offer. Go to butcherbox.com/Stephen A. That's butcherbox.com/Stephen A. Bob Wischusen sitting in on the Stephen A. Smith Show. We'll come right back on ESPN Radio.
Here's the Select Quote term life insurance difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate. But Select Quote chops and gets you up to... James Harden's averaging 40 a game. He is averaging 40 a game. That's what he's doing. The brother is special. He's something to behold. He's averaging 40. He scored over 50 on about 3 or 4 occasions this year. He scored over 40, obviously, numerous times. He has scored over 30 on all other 29 teams in the NBA. That is what James Harden has done. Chris Paul's been hurt, no matter. Clint Capella has been hurt, no matter. Eric Gordon has been hurt, no matter. James Harden has been that kind.
Whether the flag is thrown or not, I'm against it. I'm in the minority. Certainly based on the NFL vote, I'm in the minority, and I think they are setting themselves up for monstrous controversy in the last 2 minutes of close games when every little bit of contact, they're going to want one sideline or the other is going to want to get the replay booth involved. But one other thing that I think needs to be brought up football-wise is on the eve of the draft, and now we're less than a month away from the draft, trade talk is going to really heat up. And right here in New York City, I think the team that could start the domino effect, should they choose, because they need a quarterback and they've got the ammunition to go up and get one or to prevent other teams from getting their guy, is the Giants. And you hear a lot of talk about now the Giants might not even take a quarterback at 6 if they stay put. They may wait until 17 to take a Daniel Jones. I don't think Drew Lock's going to fall that far, but maybe they'll like one of those secondary guys at 17 and use the 6th pick for a defensive player and get 2 guys. I think that's a mistake. I'm a big Haskins fan. I think he is absolutely a worthy top 5 pick. I think the Jets should be a target for the Giants to potentially come up and make a trade. But what the Giants are trying to do right now is convince everybody that they've got a plan. And that their plan is at some point to put a quarterback behind Eli Manning, but to move forward that way. And to me, if you have a plan, you decisively go get your quarterback. And if Haskins is your quarterback, you do whatever you've got to do to go get him and build a new 10 to 15-year run around that guy. I think any other position, if you've got quarterback settled, any other position, you may like guys ahead of you at 6, but you can stay put at 6. You could take the best available player, stay put at 17, take the next best available player, and move forward as long as you've got your quarterback. With any other position, That's fine. With quarterback, you need to be decisive and you need to go get your guy. Because I've been working around the Jets since 1996, and I've been their play-by-play guy since 2002. So I have lived through a lot of eras of Jet football here in New York where the Jets were the rudderless ship, where they were always looking to kind of middle it. I don't want to pay the price to go from 6 to 3, so instead I'm going to take a quarterback further back in the draft, like a Geno Smith in the second round, and I'm going to try to middle it and get a steal later in the draft and, see if I can kind of find a diamond in the rough. Very rarely does that work, at least on purpose. Oftentimes when that happens, it happens by accident. Russell Wilson happens by accident. The Seahawks were convinced, but not convinced enough to draft him in the first or second round. Draft him in the third round. You think they would have taken with one of their first 2 picks if they knew what they know now? To me, when you think you've got a quarterback and you're sold on one, and I can't tell you whether the Giants are sold on Haskins or not. The proof will be in what they do. But what I can tell you is a guy that's got this type, I think, of, a set of measurables and played the way he played, and the more you hear about him, the more you hear that he's got that brain that processes information, that is going to be able to run an NFL offense and be able to deal with all of the different arrows that are flying his way. You get a guy like that, you better believe if you're sitting at 6, somebody's going to jump up ahead of you, make a deal with one of those teams ahead of you and go get them because they're going to be decisive and they're going to go after him. I think the Giants, because they've got the 17th pick as well, they've got the ammunition to move up. I think they hold the key to how this whole draft could end up shaking out. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. But when a quarterback is concerned, my philosophy, you do what the Jets finally did last year. They finally, outside of the one shot at it they took with Mark Sanchez, and it didn't work, they finally, for the first time since Sanchez, came to a consensus about the quarterback, took whatever ammunition it was going to take to move up into the top 3 to make sure that they got a guy, and they decisively went and took the CEO and put him at the head of their organization, which is what Sam Darnold is now going to be for the next decade plus. They were decisive, they moved up, they got their guy. You try and middle it at quarterback, you try and wait and hope guys fall to you, you wait in the middle of the first round and take one of those secondary guys that the rest of the league don't have a consensus on, you are rolling the dice. And you can very easily appear to be the rudderless ship as opposed to the team that's got a plan. Let's go to Nathan, who joins us next here on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. What's up, Nathan?
Oh, not too much. Out of this whole light of the situation, what I'm realizing more and more with the NFL is they're too reactive with all their situations that they handle stuff with instead of being proactive. When this came out that this egregious call was made, the NFL needed to come right out and nip this in the butt and say, this was a bad call. This was a mistake that was made, but we're not going to look at restructuring how rules and how things are done. And I agree with you 1,000%. They're opening Pandora's box by being able to review judgment calls. That's taking the officiating out of the game when you take their judgment call away.
Well, just by definition, your judgment might be different than my judgment. They may get a call in the last 2 minutes of a championship game or a Super Bowl where replay initiates now a pass interference call that's iffy from the booth. They go with what replay says. They change a call on the field and end up with just as big a controversy in that direction as the blown call last year in the NFC Championship game. Mike joins us next year on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike?
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
You got
it. A couple things. I think if this rule was relegated to the challenge flag system throughout the entire game, it could be better because coaches are going to hold on to those flags a little bit longer in case a call like that throws up. But secondly,
I agree with you, but and I'll let you make your point, but just put yourself in the position of a head coach now. You're down by 4. You got 2 timeouts. There's a minute 30 on the clock. You're the play caller. You're an Andy Reid or a Sean Payton or someone like that. You have all those different things going on in your brain. What they're trying to do, by taking the last 2 minutes, the crucible moments of the game, and putting that in the replay booth. All replays are, they're trying to take that off the coach's plate because the coach has so much going on in his, orbit in the last 2 minutes of a close game that he shouldn't also have to worry about correcting blown calls. That there should be a backup system to make sure that that's not on his plate any longer. That's what they're trying to do, I think, in the last 2 minutes of these games. So go ahead, make your point.
Well, the funny thing is, I would kind of go the other direction and put more on the teams and say, okay, let's raise the stakes for the last 2 minutes. You can throw the flag, but if you get it wrong, it's a loss of a timeout and a loss of a down. That way, it puts it back on the teams and less on the officials and the controversy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you want to gamble here, go for it if it's worth it. But the stakes are higher. Yeah,
I think you're going someplace that's unnecessary. I don't think they should have to do that. I mean, I think that this is, again, that's the byproduct of opening Pandora's box. That's where all of a sudden this whole thing starts going down a slippery slope where now you might bring in other judgment calls that replay might want to get involved in as the years go on. I mean, why do we think that the only game-changing calls we're going to have are going to be involving pass interference? What happens if next year, in the NFC or AFC championship game, minute to go, somebody very clearly roughs the quarterback? Or somebody doesn't rough the quarterback and a flag gets thrown? Somebody gets a 15-yard penalty, moves them into field goal range, and they kick a game-winning field goal that they would not have been in field goal range without having gotten the benefit of that flag. Now, all of a sudden, that judgment call may end up in the replay booth. All for a call that I don't think we're ever going to see again. That's the thing that drives me crazy about this. I don't think you're ever in your lifetime going to see a blown call the likes of which you saw last year in the NFC Championship game. I don't see it happening. I think 99.8% of officials would have pulled a flag out in that spot and thrown the damn flag. And then we wouldn't be in this spot. But now you're talking about all of these, if he calls one way or the other, potentially in the last 2 minutes especially, when the game's on the line, the booth buzzing down because two guys last year were looking right at a play in front of them and just didn't have the onions to throw the flag. If they would have thrown the flag last year, this would not be the spot that we're in. I'm telling you, there will be games played in the NFL this year where all the conversation on Monday, all of it, is going to be about, can you believe replay initiated or flipped a pass interference call in that game, change the end of the game? It's going to happen. You start going to replay on judgment calls, it is going to happen. If you missed any of the show, go and check it out on demand. The Stephen A. Smith podcast brought to you by Capital One Sabre Card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, 1% on all other purchases. What's in your wallet? And as the new season gets underway, the TuneIn app has every baseball fan covered from opening day to the World Series. Listen to your favorite team with live calls for every MLB game with TuneIn Premium. Your all-in-one audio app, TuneIn brings together not only MLB coverage, but other live sports, music, news, podcasts, including all of your favorite ESPN radio podcasts like The Stephen A. Smith Show. Download the TuneIn app and begin your free 30-day trial of TuneIn Premium today. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Not only on ESPN Radio, but on the app, on the Listen tab of the ESPN app, Channel 80, Sirius XM, and ESPN News. You can always tune in on television as well. I'm also at ESPN Bob on Twitter. So if you want to tweet me or follow me, feel free. I would love it. I throw gems out there once in a while. If you're not one of my followers, you're kind of missing out.
I mean, we're damn near close to putting a diaper and a bib on him, for crying out loud. That's how protected LeBron is. I even came to his defense last week when people were getting beside themselves talking all of this nonsense about him. He ain't want to win and all that. Stop. He doesn't deserve that. But I'll tell you what I went off about today. So I don't know whether it was some photo or whatever, but some woman that had worked towards helping LeBron James with his rehabilitation tweeted out before deleting the tweet about working out with him and essentially saying Here's my point, ladies and gentlemen. Why now? LeBron James got hurt Christmas Day against Golden State. He missed the next 18 games. LeBron James has been back since before the All-Star break. LeBron James has been back for damn near 2 months. Why are we just learning about this now? Now, I want to make sure that everybody is clear with what I'm saying. I want to make sure everybody's clear, so we all understand each other. I don't know what happened. I'm not saying that LeBron or his camp or whatever lying, about anything. I don't know. I'm just giving my humble opinion. Ain't no inside information here. I'm just telling you what I feel. I find it a tad bit odd that now that the Lakers season is officially over, essentially eliminated from the playoffs, that means, and LeBron ain't going to the playoffs.
The Steve Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase. Plus, if you need seats to a game, download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout and get 10% off your first order. Don't just buy any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Squeeze in a couple of more calls for the top of the hour before we talk some baseball with Carl Ravitch. Mel, who calls us next here on ESPN Radio. Hello, Mel.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Question I have for you. I watch the program. I follow sports. Not one of your announcers have ever said that I heard of that the reason I understand the call. That's perfect. I understand it. Not one of you blamed it on the coach for not winning that game. Why don't you run the ball?
Oh, that's been talked about to death, Mel. I mean, that has been the play call there obviously was debatable, but the reason the play call only becomes a debate is because they didn't throw the flag for pass interference. They do what they're supposed to do, throw the flag for pass interference, and the Saints run the clock down, kick a field goal, and win the game.
But didn't they run the ball before the
Regardless, Mel, whether or not you disagree or agree with the play call that was made there has nothing to do with whether or not they got the call right or wrong, and the trickle-down effect that now results in a rules change that involves replay, especially in the last 2 minutes of each half in every game going forward. Yes, that's a totally separate debate. It was a debate we've had, believe me, ad infinitum. Opening day is tomorrow, and Carl Ravitch calling the Yankees-Orioles. He'll join us next on ESPN Radio.
Host, The Stephen A. Smith Show, starts right now.
Live from New York City, the Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu. Training for a better life. Plus, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $668. Call or click today and find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. Again, Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. We'll get back to the phones in just a little bit at 888, say ESPN. But the sun is shining in New York City. Temperatures approaching 50 degrees. And Carl Ravitch is going to be at the Yankees opener tomorrow, where the mercury is supposed to actually get to the mid-50s. And Carl, when there's baseball being played, the sun is out and the temperature is over 50. For those of us that live where we live, it feels like it's 75 degrees outside. Like,
you're right about that.
What is
100% right.
What opening day is better than baseball?
None. No, there is not one that's better than baseball, especially in the Northeast. I mean, last year, Bob, I drove down from Bristol to Yankee Stadium. Finally got within about 50 yards of the stadium, only to hear the game has been canceled and literally turned around in a snowstorm. So this is a complete win. But there is no better day. It's evolved a little bit. It's changed, and I think in the American League you only have a certain amount of teams that that really believe they can win, and that's probably true. The National League is a little bit different. And I think, way back when our dads were watching, opening day meant, here we go, hope and faith, mud ceiling. We all have a chance. Not the case this season. I don't believe.
Yep. Obviously, the Habs are very, very strong in the American League. There are a few more teams that are kind of pretend Habs, I guess you could say, in the National League. But let's start with the American League, the game you'll have tomorrow. The Yankees, of course, they seem to be Vegas's, at least in most books, odds-on favorite to at least make it to the World Series, if not win it. And yet, I don't know. I think that there's an element of health with their rotation. They kind of settled for the secondary guys instead of getting the top stars that were available on the free agent market. And last year, their rotation wasn't as good as the Red Sox. And this year, I don't think depth-wise, especially if Sale stays healthy, it's as good as the Red Sox again. Obviously, their bullpen is amazing. But are they going to be able to just slug their way to the World Series, even if their starting pitching is subpar? Or do you think my concerns would be valid if I was looking at the Yankees starting pitching and be a little worried?
Yeah, I think that the Red Sox would have an advantage over all the teams in the American League when it comes to the starting rotation. That is assuming health and Sale stays healthy and Price stays healthy and Porcello doesn't get hit in the head by line drives like he did the other night in an exhibition game. But I think you're right. My first gut reaction to you saying I'm not so sure is you're from New York and you're a fan and you've been exposed, and I know you're a Mets fan, but you've been exposed to reality, and reality suggests in this case there are some things about the Yankees that don't bring you back to when they were automatically going to the World Series, when they were the power. There are definitely three powers in the American League now, and I don't put Cleveland in that category. But when James Paxton's name popped up, that was the one guy that I thought could be a difference maker in Houston, in Boston, in New York, in Los Angeles for the Dodgers. And the fact that the Yankees got him, I'm all in on Paxton. I think he fits perfectly in this environment. I think he'll be great against the Red Sox, who are their chief rival in the American League East. I loved him and thought that was a great pickup. I don't think they shop in the Machado and Harper Waters or stores because I don't think they need them. If they didn't go get Stanton, maybe that's different. But I don't think either one of those guys fit with that organization and the way they're built. And I think the Yankees win the American League East. They beat out Boston. But I don't think the wild card with the rotations that these teams have, assuming their aces are okay, make a big difference. In Boston, they better be able to deal with a wild card than New York because of that pitching depth. But all three of those, Bob, you know this, that they're all in a position to trade deadline or guys that's going to be a free agent after next year to go out and make that move to solidify themselves.
Right. There's no question. I'm sure the Yankees could potentially, depending on what happens with CeCe, depending on what happens with Severino, they could be in the market as the season moves on to go out and get another starting pitcher. They could get a J-Happ like they did. Sure.
Right away.
I mean, why wouldn't? And how crazy is it that Dallas Keuchel is not with someone?
Makes no sense.
Makes no
zero
sense.
I know Boris went out and said, look, we're looking for 5 or 6 years. That may have been a mistake. But a closer and Kimbrel, I wouldn't do that. But a guy like Keuchel, 3 or 4 years for sure. But again, the one position that all of these teams that are in either league and are competing for a postseason or World Series berth, if they don't go and get Dallas Keuchel when one of their starters goes down, then you really have a problem. I don't understand why he's still out there, but gosh, that guy will be absolutely in demand because like Severino and others, starters get hurt.
Yep. No, there's no question. Although in the American League, as sexy as it is to talk about how the Yankees and Red Sox are going to slug each other out all the way through the season, and it's going to probably be a great race to see who wins that division. The other team will most likely be the wild card. Wouldn't you love to be the Astros? Where if you've got some injuries, don't worry about it. If your bullpen's a little banged up, you got some guys need a day off, don't worry about it. You're going to win your division by 15 games if you sleepwalk through the season. I think the Astros might be the most dangerous team in the American League, and I think they might be the deepest.
I'm a little worried about their starting pitching. I think they rely on some young guys. The Correa neck injury, as I was saying this morning on Buster Olney's podcast, like there's two things that are not good. Nothing good happens after 1 a.m., and any injury that lingers is just a bad thing. So he's got a lingering issue that created itself last year. And when you're going into a season and there's this lingering neck pain, that's an orange flag for me. It's not red and it ain't yellow. It's orange. There's something going on there. And for a guy that is middle of the order shortstop on a would-be World Series team, that's a cautionary flag to begin with. So, sure, is it easier to be in the AL West than it is the AL East? Absolutely. I think Cleveland's got problems this year with Minnesota. But beyond those, it's funny, you look at Fangraphs or 538 and the American League, it's like 89% chance playoffs, Yankees, 86 Red Sox, 87 Astros, 82 Indians. And then you drop off the map. You get to like the Rays and the Twins down to the 40%.
Yep.
And the National League is very different than that.
Carl Ravitch with us here. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. We'll get back to the phones coming up in just a little bit. But Ravi, of course, is the face and voice of baseball tonight. He'll have the call of Yankees-Orioles tomorrow at the stadium on opening day. Well, let's flip over to the National League real quick because there are many more teams that probably can make the argument that they may be the best in the National League. And there are many more teams that you probably can paint as like a Minnesota Twins-esque dark horse in the NL. So right now, if you had to pick the team you think will emerge from the National League, who would you put your money on right now?
Yeah, I think the Nationals are separated. The Nationals and Dodgers have separated themselves, and I think the Nationals are going to be better for a lot of reasons than they've been, and it's not necessarily an addition by subtraction with Harper, but their defense in the outfield is going to be better. I think you've added Corbin there, and the bullpen is good. You've created an environment there where I think you have a bunch of players who will walk around this year and have this spring saying, we know who's not here, and we will show you we are way bigger than one player. So I think the Nationals are the best. I think the Dodgers are right there. And then I think after that, you could have the Phillies, the Braves, or the Mets win a wild card, or two of them. You could have, I think the Cubs win the Central. You could have the Cardinals or the Brewers, and I think the Pirates are going to be pretty interesting this year. Win a wild card, and out west, clearly the Rockies can do that. So there's an awful lot more teams that find themselves in the 50 to 60% chance to make the playoffs versus necessarily the 89 to 92s that you see in the American League.
Yeah, I'm a Met fan, so obviously, and a Jet broadcaster, so obviously I have just a natural pessimism that grows inside of me like a weed as baseball season starts.
I'm the anti-pessimistic guy because I'm surrounded by Mets people that last year thought prior to injuries they were knocking on the door. I love the DeGrom signing. I would never give a guy like that away, and I don't care that you could do this next year. The problem with the Mets has been their injuries. It's kind of like the Angels, and the Mets are way better than the Angels are relative to their league and their division. If they can get healthy and Conforto can hit again and the bullpen is strong and those starters come through, they're an 86 to 89, 90 win team. Now, if the stuff goes bad and they get hurt, Cespedes never comes back and all that happens, you could win 80 games and that would stink. But I'm been bullish on the Mets because of those two guys at the top, and I'll stay that way.
Yeah, I guess it seems like every spring we're in this position with the Mets. They've got all of these questions, and as a Met fan, you're sitting there going, well, all of these questions could turn out to be yeses, and it could be 2015, and you could be sitting there watching them play in late October going, how did we get here? This is amazing. I thought this was an 80-win team at the start of the season. They were in the World Series, and yet last year...
And look, the Alonso deal is a good idea for them. I think there's like a trend here in Major League Baseball that I think there's a recognition that the CBA is going to change down the road here.
Right, the service time rule?
We're going to eliminate it. It's just asinine to have a system in which you're, in a sense, not putting your best players on the field so you can save a year of their service time later. That makes no sense, and that will absolutely be addressed. And we're at a time now where we should reward the 22 to 26-year-old player because the 32 to 36 isn't getting rewarded anymore and shouldn't. So that will change, and I think Tatis Jr. out in San Diego and Alonso here in New York are indications that at least through a crystal ball you can see how this world is going to change, and for the better.
The most amazing stat that I remember from last season was, by far, the number one pitcher in baseball, ERA-wise, of course, was DeGrom, and he won the Cy Young because of it. The second best ERA collectively in the National League were all of the pitchers that pitched against Jacob DeGrom and against the Mets. If you took the guy he went up against in like his 30-some-odd starts, he had what, like a 180 ERA? Yes. And his opposing pitchers had like a 190 ERA. They never scored for him. And I'm wondering if I'm supposed to believe that a full season of the McNeils and the Nimmos of the world, Pete Alonso is going to be added to this lineup, an aging Robbie Cano, and all of a sudden they're going to go from a team that last year, couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat to now actually giving these starters some run support. And who knows if Cespedes will play at any point this year. I'm looking at their lineup and I'm wondering how I'm supposed to believe they're going to be good enough offensively to surprise everyone and compete with the Nationals, the Phillies, and the Braves.
Hard to argue. Although, it is, and again, if you took it in a vacuum, you're questioning Nimmo's ability. You're questioning Alonso's ability. You called Cano aging, and he's certainly getting older. We're not getting any younger. And yet, I would think that going into a season, an engaged Robinson Cano is a really good hitter you didn't have last year.
True.
Michael Conforto at the end of the year and during flashes of his career showed he can be a very good bat. So you could certainly go with the optimistic, hey, we got Cano. We didn't have him last year. We have a Conforto that's better. We didn't even know who Peter Alonso was last year, and now there's a chance he starts at first base. Yeah, the Cespedes thing is a mystery, and it's a frustrating mystery. But to me, I'll go with more reasons for optimism and hope that the team doesn't just – and look, there have been a bunch of pitchers, Bob, that this, when they go on the mound, whether they're with a team that is supposed to score runs or don't, and you have Clemens on the mound, many of the Yankees have recognized, why don't they score when he's on the mound? It happens with other pitchers historically when they are the ace. I don't know. The offense just decides today we don't need it. If we get one or two, we're good. Instead of going in with the idea, let's get him 6 or 7 and win the game easily.
Take some heat off.
That may be a frame of mind.
I'm coming around. If you can't be optimistic on opening day of baseball, at what day of the year can you be optimistic? So, all right, now I'm optimistic. Mets are going to win 93.
Drink the Kool-Aid, brother. Drink the Kool-Aid.
I love it. I appreciate it. Ravi, have a great call tomorrow. And, I'll be watching baseball tonight all year as we're all baseball fans. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Carl Ravitch with us here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen sitting for Stephen A. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by Prilosec OTC. Kick your antacid habit with Prilosec OTC. We'll get back to the phones. All right, now baseball's on the table as well. You want to talk about the NFL rule changes? Certainly can. Want to talk about the NFL draft? I brought the Giants up and how they may shake the draft up. You could certainly bring up baseball as well because it's opening day. And for anyone that doesn't live where palm trees are just naturally in your front yard, like if you live in Miami or you live in Arizona, you live in Southern California, I have a natural, I shouldn't say natural, almost like an illogical, unnatural hatred towards all of you because you get to walk out your front door on a Saturday morning in January and it's just 70 degrees. You have no idea what baseball means to those of us that live for no reason other than we are somehow ensconced in these places where it's cold. We live in these places where the taxes are too high, where there's too much traffic, where the houses cost too much, there's just too many people, it's too loud, and in the wintertime, it's miserable and cold. We have to get through all of that. And how do we get through it? Opening day, baseball. When baseball comes back, I'm totally convinced that's a big reason why baseball is such a huge sport in cities. Not just the history of it, but in cities like Chicago, like Philly, like Boston, St. Louis, New York, because it means good weather is finally coming back. And it finally is going to happen tomorrow. We're going to have some sunshine in New York City and a baseball game or two to watch. So we will go back to the phones, talk to Dale, who joins us next year on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. What's up, Dale?
Yeah, I just let you know I don't agree with your instant replay.
Fire away.
I think you need it in at least the last 2 minutes of the game when everything's on the line. If it means the difference between winning and losing, yes, it needs to be reviewed.
Which in the NFC Championship game it did, and that's why 31 out of 32 teams voted your way. And the Bengals are the only team that voted my way. But again, my question, Dale, is why do you think this is going to eliminate controversy? Why do you think at the end of games, especially for pass interference, but don't you think there's the potential for this to add even more controversy to the ends of these games?
Well, it's possible it could, but what really bothered me was there was a petition going around in the Rams territory to get one of the officials kicked off the officiating team, and because he supposedly was showing bias when they played against the Rams.
I mean, that I'm not into conspiracy theories. I don't care. That, to me, that's the lunatic fringe. I don't think any of those officials in that spot didn't pull out their flag because they've got some bias against the Saints or they had bets on the Rams. I mean, that moments like that in the NFC Championship game bring out the wacko theories. I don't subscribe to any of those. I just think those officials pulled a rock in that spot and they just blew it. Jay joins us next here on ESPN Radio. Hello, Jay.
Hey, Bobby. How you doing?
Good.
Second time calling in, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Thanks for buzzing.
I like that you're passionate about that pass interference, and so I just have two things for you real quick. Number one, what's your opinion on how to fix it, or should we have just left it alone as far as, like, is there a change that could have been made and not the one that they did?
Yeah, get an official that's competent enough at a big spot to throw a flag.
That's right.
I mean, that's the thing that I think is the craziest about this. And even if this is only a one-year trial balloon, there will be games this year that will be affected, and maybe it will be enough of a controversy, multiple games, last 2 minutes where they'll say this is just ridiculous, and they'll blow it up after this year, yank it back out, and it won't be something going forward that they're going to use. But, to me, I don't think we are ever going to see in our lifetime a call that obvious in that type of a spot of that magnitude blown that way again in such, a crazy fashion.
Yeah, it was egregious. Okay, so then maybe we get rid of those two officials that were looking at it, and that sends the message to the officials.
Well, the one thing I would guarantee you is I don't think those guys are going to get fired. And I think I have heard, the Mike Pereiras of the world, who certainly are inside the beltway as far as the officials are concerned. Those guys are to be an official on the field at the NFC Championship game. Understand, you needed to grade out the entire season as the best of the best. Those crews are theoretically the best officials the NFL has. Every single play of every single game, from the eye position of every single official, is graded by the league, and those grades produce the officials that you see in the playoffs. So what you will never see again will be either of those two guys on the field in a championship game. The two guys that had eyes on that play, and neither of them had the rocks to pull out a flag and throw it there, are not going to be put in that position again because they proved they weren't up to the task. But that doesn't mean the other guys that don't grade out well aren't. I think 99% of the officials in the NFL would have pulled out a flag there and thrown it. That's how obvious the call was. So to now alter the way that all of these games could potentially be played at the end of games, in the last 2 minutes especially, where you're going to get pass interference or non-calls initiated from the booth based on a call that was just so mind-numbingly obvious that I don't think that circumstance is coming up again. Maybe I'll be wrong. 888 say ESPN. 888-729-3776. Do you have frequent heartburn? Like the kind where you have antacid stashed everywhere in case it pops up? You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag, some in your desk, some in your car, your nightstand, those chalky tablets ready for whenever and wherever heartburn strikes. Well, listen up. There's an easier way to deal with your heartburn. Prilosec OTC. Just one pill a day will last 24 hours with zero heartburn. Kick your antacid habit.
James Harden's averaging 40 a game. He is averaging 40 a game. That's what he's doing. The brother is special. He's something to behold. He's averaging 40. He scored over 50 on about 3 or 4 occasions this year. He scored over 40, obviously, numerous times. He has scored over 30 on all other 29 teams in the NBA. That is what James Harden has done. Chris Paul's been hurt, no matter. Clint Capella has been hurt, no matter. Eric Gordon has been hurt, no matter. James Harden has been that kind of brother. He has been nothing short of spectacular. Holding it down. This is what he does. This is what he brings to the table. The Greek Freak, Stephen A., why are you not giving him that same level of credit? Why are you not doing that? I'll tell you why he's not doing that. I'll tell you why I'm not doing that. Because the Greek Freak has Mike Budenholzer. The Greek Freak has an exceptional coach who I think is going to be coach of the year. And led by his schemes, obviously assisted by the greatness of the Greek Freak, because he is great. Milwaukee's number one defense in the NBA. You got a top-notch defense. You got personnel to assist along with exceptional coaching. That does it. When I look at Mike D'Antoni, nothing but respect, but let's call it what it is. Mike D'Antoni, you could call him innovative offensively. You could call it all of those things, but here's the reality of the situation. When he was in New York, he gave the ball. When he was in Phoenix, he gave the ball to Steve Nash. When he was in New York, he gave the ball to Jeremy Lin. When Carmelo arrived, he wasn't down with that.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Friend or loved one with a buy one, get one free multicolored rose bouquet for $29.99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Stephen A. Smith Show here on ESPN Radio. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Get right back to the phones. But I thought one interesting thing that was worth playing with Freddie and Fitzsimmons, Dean Blandino, who used to be the guy in Al Riveron's spot running the NFL Replay Center and making these decisions, now has moved over to Fox and is one of their NFL rules analysts. But he joined Freddie and Fitzsimmons and had a couple things to say about where the competition committee has now gone with, deciding to involve instant replay in offensive and defensive pass interference. And maybe we could play the first cut, guys, of Dean Blandino and hear what he had to say about how not that long ago this was not even on the table, and this one call in the NFC Championship game has changed all that.
This is the competition committee that, just as recently as 2-3 years ago, was adamantly opposed to making these subjective calls reviewable like pass interference. And again, I think 1 year, I like the idea of a 1 year experiment in essence, so that you don't have to vote it out next year. If it doesn't work, you can just, not vote it back in. But I think we're going to see there's a lot of things that they have to vet out. There's a lot of probably some unintended consequences.
Well, the unintended consequences, read between the lines. That is the replay booth getting involved in a 50-50 call inside of the last 2 minutes because the game's on the line. There's a 20-yard pass thrown over the middle, and at full speed, bang, bang, did the safety get there right as the ball arrived? Did he get there a shade early? And we're going to be in super slow-mo 5-minute delay mode to see if there's a game-changing pass interference call that they may go to replay and stick with the call on the field and pick the flag up or say that they were right to not throw a flag. There is not only the chance for there to be game-changing mistakes made, there is the chance that at the ends of these games, we could have like terminal trips back and forth to the replay booth. They could be in and out of the replay booth 3 or 4 times in the last 2 minutes on pass interference calls just because One team or the other with 2 minutes to go is most likely going to be down and throwing the ball. There will be games like that. Mark my words, there'll be games like that. And when that happens, I'm wondering how happy we're all going to be that we completely overreacted to one call in one big spot where one official, two officials actually, didn't have the stones to throw a flag, and we could have avoided all this. Let's go to Brandon, who joins us next year on ESPN Radio. Hey, Brandon.
How's it going, Bob?
Good.
Good. Hey, I want to let you know, man, I completely 100% agree with you. We already have too many pass interference calls to begin with. And the whole point of the replay, as you mentioned, is to find undisputable evidence. And plain and simple, pass interference, if I have my arm on your arm, you can say that I'm affecting you catching the ball. Somebody else may not view it as such. And overall, I think it's mentioning Pandora's box. It really is. Now all of a sudden you're going to have quarterbacks pointing to the other side of a field. All of a sudden holding is going to be reviewable on offense and defense. And we're giving them too many chances to put the game in the officials' hands. And like you said, over one blown call, that is just not going to happen again. Now we're going to have to be putting through all these instant replays for something so simple.
Yeah, there is a reason that they have never put replay into judgment call situations in the past. There's a reason for that. And I really think this year there's a very good chance we're going to find out that reason. And maybe after 1 year, maybe there will be so many terrible ends to games where the replay booth is just way over involved that they'll yank it out. Maybe a year from now it won't even be a factor anymore. They may say this just didn't work. And because they only have it in for 1 year. If it doesn't work, it's not like they have written this into... In order for this to happen beyond this coming season, they have to revisit this whole thing next year if they want to make this permanent. Because right now, this is kind of a 1 year trial balloon. But even for 1 year, I don't like the idea of the last 2 minutes of a game. Every receiver right now throws their arms up looking for a flag at the end of every play where they don't catch the ball. Think of how many more times those guys might throw their arms up at the end of every play looking for a flag when they don't come away with the ball, when they know by throwing their arms up, they can draw the attention of the replay booth. Ben joins us next year on ESPN Radio. What's up, Ben?
Hey, Bob. This is the first time I've ever gotten into ESPN, so this is awesome.
Welcome aboard.
I just wanted to say, I'm a huge football fan, and all the talk of the Giants is getting really old because they haven't been relevant since 2011. But Eli Manning's completion percentage, everybody talks about that like last year was the greatest of his career. Do
it's
you
Saquon
know
Barkley.
that Barkley's touch after catch was 8.7?
Right.
8.7.
Correct.
So people point out that his yards after catch were higher, but without Saquon had what, 81 catches, something like that?
Yeah, but I mean, any quarterback that's got a high completion percentage now in the NFL has it because he's got a running back he can throw the ball to. That's where a high percentage comes from.
That's what I'm saying. That percentage only has to do with the modernization of the NFL. It has nothing to do with Eli's improvement. But I'm just wondering how much you think Le'Veon is going to help out Sam Darnold.
Tremendously.
And how excited you are for that. Because I also feel like some quarterbacks do, Tyrod Taylor, for instance, I feel like his success came so much from throwing short balls that he became accustomed to doing it, and he kind of lost his mid-accuracy.
Ben, Tom Brady's success is largely based on throwing mid-range balls. He had Rob Gronkowski and a bunch of running backs and a bunch of little slot receivers that run all these little option routes. I mean, how often do you think Tom Brady is throwing a ball that travels 15 yards or more in the air? Most of his success is based on throwing the ball to guys that are within 6 to 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. A lot of times a check down in the backfield. Sometimes it's just a little seam route to Rob Gronkowski. But it's the ability to be able to create those mismatches and have a quarterback that can instantaneously identify the mismatch and exploit it. I don't penalize Eli Manning for having Saquon Barkley. And I think Sam Darnold is going to benefit tremendously from having Le'Veon Bell. That's an unbelievable security blanket for a quarterback to have, especially a young quarterback. Check it down. Don't throw it into traffic. Just check it down. Especially since this is the first time, maybe since Freeman McNeil, where the Jets have had a running back where they could throw a 5-yard pass to him, and that 5-yard pass that you're watching on Sunday in the box score on Monday is a 50-yard touchdown. Wow, look at that. Sam Darnold threw a 50-yard touchdown pass to Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, he threw it 4 yards. And Le'Veon did the rest. I mean, Curtis Martin's in the Hall of Fame. That was not Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin was never a breakaway home run hitting type of a runner. He was caught from behind almost every time he got into the open field. He just didn't have blazing speed. He was so unbelievably tough, so unbelievably disciplined, always played hurt, so strong, yards after contact. That was his strength. But he wasn't this elusive, game-breaking, 50-plus yard type potential player. Le'Veon Bell's a home run hitter. And you better believe that is something that every quarterback in the NFL would embrace as being a part of their offense, including the Giants with Saquon Barkley. Let's go to Mike, who joins us next year on ESPN Radio. Hey, Mike.
Yes. Bob, welcome. And glad you had me on the line, doing a great job filling in for Stephen A. I wanted to talk to you a little about the replay. And I think you hit it right on the head when you said it's going to become more complicated. Those things there's going to be more calls that are going to be controversial. I think what they ought to do is just give them 4 or 5 replay contestants, take the 2 minutes out of it, have the coaches have to decide, and have it cost them a timeout every time. So if they want to review a play, they use a timeout to do it.
Yeah, a caller brought this up before, and I don't know if you heard my explanation then, but I'll give it to you as well. You're Andy Reid. You're the play caller. You're Sean Payton. You're the play caller. 2 minutes to go in a game. Your team's down 4. You got 1 timeout left. The clock is running. You're trying to get a couple of plays called with your quarterback in the huddle. You're trying to manage your substitutions, what personnel packages you want on the field. You've got all of this game management, the cacophony of noise in the stadium. All of this is in your orbit. In the last 2 minutes, they want to take getting the calls right off the plate of the coach. And I understand that. I mean, there are a lot of head coaches that want it to be like the college deal, where there's no challenges. Just get the call right. If replay needs to get involved, the booth should buzz down, and all of the decisions should come from the booth, because I don't really feel like I got enough to worry about. So certainly the balance they've tried to strike is in the last 2 minutes when you're running hurry up. You're running no huddle, and there's a lot of things to worry about. We're not going to put that on your plate, too. And I understand that. CB joins us next here on ESPN Radio. Hey, CB.
Oh, the NFL is fantastic. I love it. But, this is stranger than fiction. When you're dealing with these flags being thrown and all this and, over-reviewing plays, I think the NFL is fine. I do feel bad for New Orleans Saints. I think they kind of got jilted.
Oh, they got jammed. They got screwed. Yeah. There's no question.
Yeah, I feel bad for them. But you know what? The Rams only scored 3 points in the Super Bowl. So, it was almost like karma. But let me tell you, Bob, thanks for taking my call. But when Tom Brady takes the field, there's only one thing. That is to protect the shield. He steps to the left. He steps to the right. But there's no receiver in sight. He checks down just as you said. And then Gronk comes free. And it amazes us to the 10th degree. Gronk powers his way to would-be tacklers and finds his way.
CB, just question, how long does this normally go? I'm just curious, what verse are we in?
Just 5 more seconds.
Is this like a sonnet? Is this like, is this how many verses are in this poem?
No. Just only 5 more seconds, Bob.
All right.
Tom Terrific is special, no doubt. But let's stand up and strike a match and give a shout out.
2,
even though he
1. Time's up. Sorry, CB. Oh, my God. Oh, my head hurts. The NBA on ESPN Radio. Tune in tonight. Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz host the Lakers, presented by Indeed. Coverage begins at 10 p.m. Eastern on most ESPN radio stations. As long as you're still with me and I didn't lose you. over the last 30 seconds. When you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard.
I mean, we're damn near close to putting a diaper and a bib on it, for crying out loud. That's how protected LeBron is. I even came to his defense last week when people were getting beside themselves talking all of this nonsense about it. He didn't want to win and all that. Stop. He doesn't deserve that. But I'll tell you what I went off about today. So I don't know whether it was some photo about working out with him and essentially saying he should have been out for 6 months. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just paraphrasing. They're essentially saying he should have been out 6 months. Should have been out 6 months. That's what they're trying to say. Here's my point, ladies and gentlemen. Why now? LeBron James got hurt against Golden State. He missed the next 18 games. LeBron James has been back since before the All-Star break. LeBron James has been back for damn near 2 months. Why are we just learning about this now? Now, I want to make sure that everybody is clear with what I'm saying. I want to make sure everybody's clear, so we all understand each other. I don't know what happened. I'm not saying that LeBron or his camp or whatever lying, about anything. I don't know. I'm just giving my humble opinion. Ain't no inside information here. I'm just telling you what I feel. I find it a tad bit odd that now that the Lakers season is officially over, essentially eliminated for the playoffs, that means, and LeBron ain't going to the playoffs.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
If you missed any of the show today, go check it out on demand. The Stephen A. Smith Podcast, brought to you by the Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at the grocery store, 1% on all other purchases. What's in your wallet? Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Just a few more minutes to get some telephone calls in, so we'll squeeze in a few if we can before the top of the hour. Mike joins us next here on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike?
Hey, how you doing, Bob?
Good.
Hey, my thing was that the no call that was also made in the Super Bowl. Remember the interception that New England caught? The pass interference no call against the Patriots that was not made.
I don't remember that specific play.
Yeah. If the play before that interception, there was a pass interference against New England that was not called. The next play was an interception.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I mean, all that's going to be up for debate now.
If you take a look at it yourself, you'll see it.
Yeah,
that was a no call made either.
We're going to have all kinds of situations like that at the end of games now. Miles joins us next here on ESPN Radio. Hey, Miles.
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
All right, I just wanted to say that I pretty much agree with you because I'm an LA Rams fan, but I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. But I think I'm pretty objective about this. So just as much as I was a beneficiary of the no call, I was a victim of, the referees calling Miles Jack down when his knee didn't touch the ground. So it's like, are they going to start going back and reviewing those calls now or what?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure exactly what you said. Let's go to Kyle in Maine, who joins us next here on ESPN Radio. What's up, Kyle?
Oh, not too much, Bob. Doing a great job filling in like always.
Thanks.
So I've been going back and forth with my Dallas Cowboys friend that I've got. doesn't matter what I do. I give him numbers. I give him everything to do with Gronk being superior to Jason Witten. How can I get through to him that it doesn't matter that Gronk, he says is made out of glass, but what the guy did in 8 seasons, essentially because he was out for almost the entire season, completely just is light years ahead of Jason Witten.
I mean, Jason Witten's also a great player and a Hall of Famer, but if you, I guess I would say this: if you gave any general manager in the history of the sport, knowing what we know now, a chance to draft either Jason Witten or Rob Gronkowski, every general manager in the history of the sport, including those in Dallas, would draft Gronk. He's better. He's the most dominant player that I've ever seen at that position. Jason Witten's a great player. Didn't change how teams defended the Cowboys. Rob Gronkowski changed how teams approached their draft. Rob Gronkowski changed how teams in the division emphasized safety as a position they knew they needed to spend money on in the free agent market or draft, just because they knew they had to have a way to guard against him as best they could, or else they had no shot to stop him. That does it for me. Thanks for all the callers. Very much appreciate you giving us buzz today. Nuno Teixeira, Cat Pastor, up in Bristol, pushing all the buttons, and John Winthrop is screening all the calls and producing the show, so could not do it without all of you. I'll see you next time when I fill in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Pandora's box has been opened. The NFL is going to start reviewing pass interference. What's next?